Welcome to Impulse, the podcast powered by Rayhan New Ventures, where we talk to founders, people who have built up their own companies, and simply people who have a passion for entrepreneurship. Today, we talk to Alberto Onetti and his exciting journey from founder to global innovation strategist. We touch his insights into the collaboration between startups and large corporations and the success factors that are necessary to make such a collaboration fruitful. We'll also touch at the end on his passion for tennis and Juventus and how that inspires him on a daily basis. So sit back and be inspired by Alberto's journey, his visions. It's going to be an exciting ride. Alberto, welcome here to the podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Super pleased to be here and to have the opportunity to talk with you.
So we've already had some chances to exchange. I think there's a whole world of topics that we are thinking about, which are maybe kind of common, but you do bring incredible experience to the table. You've started several startups yourself, including the mobile cloud company, Funambol.
Yeah.
Which is, and this I think is also very noteworthy. It's operational in Europe and in the US in Silicon Valley. You're one of the leading experts in open innovation, something I'd like to get into in a bit more detail later on. And I think, being at that interface between startups and large companies, both in Europe and the US, you of course also think a lot about the European startup ecosystem, and you have also that direct comparison to the US because you've also been very active there. And maybe later on we'll also get a chance to talk a little bit about your perspectives on the innovation landscape in Europe. But before we get there, Alberto, can you maybe just give us a brief intro on your journey, what got you to the place you are today?
Yeah, I think I have a background in economics. That's what I studied at university. I had the opportunity to study in a university college when I was the only one studying economics. I was surrounded with people doing more brilliant than me and doing different things. And that's what's been my thing. Give me a broader perspective. Again, having the opportunity, first of all, to sit with people that are smarter than you and then give you a sort of, they raise your level of ambitions when you are spending time, particularly when you're young, with people that are bright, they have issues, obviously in a certain way, they reshape your ambition in a similar way. Again, the smartest one wanted to become a university professor, and so I try to follow what the smartest were planning to do. And so I just say, okay, I will become a university professor. But I have always a bad feeling to go and teach things that I've never done. And I felt a bit uncomfortable. And so that's why, together with my person that I met in the college, was an engineer, software engineer, we started to starting companies. At the time, it was not even called startups, but technically speaking, they were. So we launched companies, try to provide websites for corporations, and the timing was totally wrong because it was too early. And corporates say, "What do we need a website? What is that?" And so we failed miserably not because the idea was not proper, but because the timing was wrong. And so we started again with a new company. There was a big need for sharing documents inside the corporation. At those times, there was no cloud. There was something that was called intranet. And so we developed a software that actually was a very, very early version of Dropbox, if you look at this, in the shape that it was, to corporation, to share documents inside the company. Actually, we've been quite successful. We were able to sell the solution, deploy the solution for many large Italian companies, also some of them international, like Kraft, Novartis. And I think we've been successful. At a certain point, we wanted to try to deploy the same business also in the US, but the industrial partner we've been working with was perceived was too risky as an option. So we sold everything and we go back. I became a university professor, and my co-founder moved to Silicon Valley to work with a company that at the end has been acquired by Reuters. And then we started a new company. It's called Funambolo, as you mentioned. That again was really the early days of the proliferation of devices. And so there was a big problem of keeping information in sync. And so we launched Funambolo back in 2003, if I can remember. And decided we put the headquarters and the heart of the company in Silicon Valley because we wanted to develop something that could become a product of world level. And so we needed capital. And in Europe, there was no capital. There was no venture capital in Europe. So we went there. It's been probably one of the first Italian, one of the first European startups to get funded by Silicon Valley VCs. And just to be totally transparent, we discussed the business opportunity with 97 of them, and just 2 invested into us. It was the number 96 and 97, so substantially we got 95 no's. And again, you learn a lot from the no, more from the no. From the yes, it's definitely more pleasure, but you learn a lot from the no. So substantially, at the end, we made it. We got funded, and then we started our journey. We raised about $35 million down the way. And the company is still alive and kicking. Technically speaking, today is delivering white label solution to big telco companies, Telefonica Group, for example, across the globe, for substantially keeping all your personal contents, video, and pictures on sync, putting them on the cloud of the operators. And so that is what the company did. And so together with Funambolo, I also started my commute into Silicon Valley. And over there, I think around 2007, 2008, I met my co-founder, Marco Marinucci. He was working at Google. At Google, 20% of your time, you can do whatever you want. Also because you work 150% of your time, so it's not a big deal. And he started a project called Mind the Bridge for trying to give him back to his country of origin, that is Italy, the concept of doing a startup, launching a venture in Silicon Valley. So sharing the mindset. And so we did that. In Funambolo, we have a similar initiative. We joined forces and we started this journey of exposing entrepreneurs and startups to the Silicon Valley mindset and mentality, with the idea potentially for some of them was to get exploited over there, as we did with one of my prior companies. And so that's what we did until 2013-14. And at those time, again, the size of our part-time activities became so big that we decided that we needed to move full-time into that. And that's what we did. And at the same time, we also noted there was a big gap to be bridged. There was the gap between the starters of the world, or the startups that have the innovation but don't have the market, and the incumbent of the world, that are companies that have the market but no longer have the innovation. So the idea of putting that together, what today we call open innovation, was something we started to develop. We had, by total pure serendipity, the opportunity to get known by the European Commission, that asked us to drive an initiative that has been launched at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January 2014, if you can remember. It's called Startup Europe Partnership. And substantially, we start working with all the big companies in Europe, helping them to shape this new way of innovating that is called open innovation. Back to today, I'm still a university professor because I love to try to explain to my students what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, to cultivate entrepreneurship. And as Mind the Bridge, we work with Fortune 500 companies, 4,000 companies, but also mid-sized companies to help them in their innovation journey that, as you know, has multiple potential tools in its own toolbox.
I mean, if I maybe try to summarize that, your journey was maybe about 3 things. It was about an obvious passion for teaching that you have. It was about an obvious entrepreneurial drive that you embody, and it was also about giving back. I think that's kind of maybe in a nutshell. Would you agree with that? Is that a reasonable synopsis, maybe in terms of your motivation or also your sense of purpose?
It's a good question. Honestly, I don't have a real answer in terms of what I like to do. I know 2 things. One, that I'm so damn curious. And so anything that I'm not able to do it is something that I'm so attracted to. And secondly, I get so bored of doing things that I'm really good at. So this is two things that are typically, I'm pretty sure, characterize me. How they do work together when they push me to do things and other is, honestly, I don't have a properly full recipe. I have an idea at least, but
Okay.
my continuity is going, moving the bar to the next level or moving from one stuff to another, more ambitious, is something that probably is one of my driver. Then I like to share it with my students because I think sharing is something that helps you to, again, each of us has brilliant ideas in his own mind, but when they come out, sometimes are not so brilliant. So the idea of sharing and discussing with others, also to get feedbacks, validation, and be able to also to inspire people to do the same, I think it's important. And I think it's part of is again, we have a direct benefit of doing that.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I think the one realization you talked about, and really taking your experience and trying to bring that back to where you came from, and then also trying to introduce startups to corporates. I mean, I think these are important transfer topics, right? So transferring experience from A to B, and trying to influence an outcome. That's highly interesting. And maybe before we get there a bit more, when you, as a European entrepreneur, went to Silicon Valley, I mean, obviously you showed persistency, so that the last two investors you talked to then actually did follow through. But what were some of the other differences in terms of culture in those two worlds? The European, maybe more traditional, versus then the Silicon Valley environment. What stuck with you there?
Silicon Valley is the Champions League. Again, if you like soccer, is the Champions League. So again, they play at the speed and with a quality and techniques that technically we are not so used to. So you need to be perfect to play ball there. If not, you don't even see the ball. And so again, as a European going to Silicon Valley, as not being native in Silicon Valley, again, if you are a product of Stanford and Berkeley, you're good. Again, you have, technically speaking, an highway that is ready for you. If you're coming from not of those places, you're coming from outside, you have a lot of barriers. Number one, language barriers. Obviously, an idea properly described, an idea so and so described with certain uncertainty, that's already is not exactly the same. So you start one step back. First of all, if you don't have, you're not part of the network, you are an outsider. Silicon Valley has pretty open mentality. Again, this is something that they are not close. But again, if you are an insider, you have highways. It's definitely a fast track to get to the right opportunity, to the right people. And number one, I believe, is number three. Sorry, is the attitude. American by attitude are overly positive and confident. So for them, what they are doing is the most interesting thing in the world. And that's the way they started. You need to know this because it's amazing. It's gorgeous. All their weekends are gorgeous. All their holidays are gorgeous. Everything is terrific, gorgeous, amazing. Whatever it happens. While we European are very, very ground-feeted, substantial. So I was, it works, it's so and so. Again, if you go there and you don't say that you're amazing, they don't even raise the hand. And so they say, okay, so if you're not amazing, why we're supposed to listen to you? And we have most of the time this approach. And again, if you look at Asian, even worse. Again, we work with a lot of Asian, Korean, Japanese startups, amazing product, amazing people, coming to Silicon Valley, coming to the US with a very, very shy approach, low, very food ground. They don't even look at them because their mentality is not a bit. So I think it's the attitude. And then another is the level of ambitions. I believe that we are very, very pragmatic culturally. And again, that's sometimes make us dream okay dreams rather than big scenarios. That is something that I believe is another big difference. We are not ambitious enough. And one thing that you immediately learn that is the fixed cost of doing something big and something small are almost the same. So go for the moon. Worst case, you will fall down somewhere in between. But if you go for getting just up the hill, best case, you will be up the hill and the moon will be far, far away.
I'm in based in Switzerland, so I also see a lot what's going on in the Swiss startup ecosystem, which is actually maybe very underrated. But we have good universities, we have a very good kind of business angel network, and so usually, the expertise, but also the work ethic of people coming from the local universities, kind of coupled with then this early stage support, really forges quite interesting startups, especially when it comes to deep tech, etc. So in Switzerland, we're all good in the early stage, but then what happens when you want to scale? That's where the local investor appetite is then not there, and that's where actually American VCs they come in and they just happily pick up these companies and take them to the US and then make them a success. And so for me, structurally, that's a challenge and a big difference between the US ecosystem, and it really actually is a problem down the road for I think whole of Europe. But based on your deep insight into the differences between Europe and Silicon Valley, what are some of the other structural differences, and what do you think the implications are? I think we don't need to worry about the US ecosystem. It's basically brought forth technological giants, which today dominate most of our lives here, maybe except for the people in behind the Chinese
Yeah.
firewall. But what about Europe, where we have a lot more of these mature industries, which are potentially in a phase of decline? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because I think they're very almost existential, especially if we look at the European market.
Big question again. Looking at the industrial ecosystem, I still believe that Europe's a problem that we no longer. Again, we have not that many large corporations. Again, there's been a very interesting study that has been done by Ilya Strabulev of Stanford Business School about the average age and profile of the top companies per ecosystem. And you look at the top 10 companies in the US, 7 out of them are born in the last 50 years, and 7 out of them are venture capital funded. If you look at the top 10 in France, none of them is born in the last 50 years. The average age is probably 100 something, and none of them has been funded by venture capital. If you go to Italy, same story. Germany, probably the same story.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I think what may differentiate US from Europe, that US has a certain way has been the courage and the ability to destroy its own industrial structure and rebirth it, and they continue to do that. And Silicon Valley is specialized in destroying what it works and rebuilding that works better and better and better. While in Europe, we have the master of keep patching things than working in the past, and we hope they might work also in the future. So this is the main difference that you see in terms of industrial dynamics on the corporate side. On the startup side, I think that the startup ecosystem in Europe today is way different from it was 20 years ago. I think we had to go to the US to get seed funding and to make a Series A for 5 million. 5 million was an impossible amount to raise in Europe 20 years ago. Today, it's now doable. I think A, B, maybe some C is something that a startup can legitimately raise in Europe. What is still missing is late stage capital in the quantity and the ability to potentially make our potential future champions to grow in Europe. But what is happening that, again, we are in those days, we are discussing about cloud and going to IPO in the US is another example of some very, very good product that has been developed, designed in a certain way and is moving to the US. Not since day one, but again, as we did, but substantially at a certain age, they moved to the US to becoming adult. I think that is probably still the missing step that you need to be fulfilled. And then also, yes, you say that we have a phenomenal research. Universities are even better than the US one. What is really missing is the mentality. The pragmatic mentality try to see business out of technology, business out of research. I think the technology transfer is something that the US had a powerful machine that was TTO, Technology Transfer Offices, while in Europe, I think we are not properly equipped except a few places to do that. And that's, I think, is mentality of the researchers. They want to be scientists and they don't have the idea of they are not exposed to example of entrepreneurial stories out of the university. The US is normal. Again, you do what the smartest in the group, as I did, doing. And if the smartest in the group, the university after the PhD are launching company, you want to do the same. Silicon Valley, the top ones want to launch their own companies. The B ones go to work for the Google of the world. The C ones go for established companies. And so that is the role. In here, the top ones go to work for established companies. The B's maybe go for work for a tech company. And maybe the C is start their own company. Again, if the parameters is flipped, you know what the outcome might be.
Very interesting difference culturally in terms of these priorities and aspirations, right? In Europe.
But this changing also this attitude. But again, when I was a kid, my grandma say you need to find a job in a bank. Yeah. Thanks to God, I didn't listen to her. Again, probably I wouldn't have a job today, but still, that is the mentality. Yeah. That was the mentality. Today, I believe that the smartest ones start to do something on their own, also because there's not so job opportunity around them.
No, and I think definitely we have learned from the US ecosystem. I see it also at my alma mater, the ETH. I mean, they have a chair now for entrepreneurialism. Entrepreneurialism is really brought into the course load at a quite early stage. They have a transfer office, and they're really encouraging these ETH spin-offs. It's become a matter of pride. You know, how many unicorns can the ETH produce? I think this is definitely healthy because I just think it's a much more future-proof approach to technology, to invention, to entrepreneurialism, and we need a lot of that in Europe, especially in view of the challenges that we face in many areas. But maybe just to come back to this idea of entrepreneurialism, if we talk about founders, what are for you the most important attributes that founders need to bring to the table so that their chance for success is higher, based on your experience, obviously?
I think we know at Mind the Bridge we are very, very data driven. We try to look at what people do. So we analyze. We made a lot of analysis. We try to see what was we have been hosting in our acceleration program for startup in San Francisco many entrepreneurs. So we try to understand what are the profile of the good ones. And again, we found it out something that is quite interesting. By the way, it's quite in line with the outcomes of similar analysis done, for example, Kaufman Foundation, trying to understand what is the profile of the entrepreneur. First of all, is not a kid. It's something ranging around between 30, 35 on average. So mean that has done something before. And what it did before, it studied. Most of them have PhD or MBAs, substantially high-level education. And B, they've done prior experience. Most of them are prior startup experience. So substantially not the first one you will be successful, probably not even the second one, maybe the third one. Then if the fourth or the fifth you are not still successful, probably it's not your job. But again, that is a different story. You're a serial value destroyer, so the point you should understand it and try to do something else, but still. So serial entrepreneurs or people that have worked in corporates, that got experience, they expand the network. And then most of them has had experience abroad. Travel a lot during the university, travel a lot for work, moving in different ecosystems. Because at the end, our value is the quality and the wideness of our network. And if we have been in different places, meaning that we are substantially embedded in multiple networks. And so we can definitely access to opportunity or deploy opportunities or find avenues where other people that are locked in a single specific network do not have. I think your story is similar. And again, we are able to go faster, because at a certain point we have a problem to solve, and we know that we have met someone that probably might be the right profile for helping me to find a potential solution, or at least I find avenue. And at the other end, we have experiences, different cultures, different markets, and then also will help you to shape an idea that is more solid. And so again, if you have just one problem, at the end, maybe just your perspective, if you have been a citizen of different networks and ecosystems, probably you have definitely a better, more comprehensive view of the problem and perspective. You can also probably assess if it's strong, solid need, or something that is probably just fade away in 2-3 weeks.
Okay. I mean, you talked before about, maybe a bit your mission to transfer, maybe knowledge or experience or impact from A to B, and at Mind the Bridge, being that middle person between such entrepreneurs that you described, between startups and the corporate world, that's what you focus on. Can you maybe just with some examples put a bit more color to that activity? So how do you do that, and maybe also have some examples of the benefits, of the fruits of this work? Would be, I think, maybe illustrative for the listeners.
No, yes, I think that we mostly work with established corporations. Established corporations are perfect, well-oiled machine to operate, to deliver operation at the most efficient possible way. But down the way, they lose the ability to do something different, to identify new avenues, new directions. So we sit with them and we try to identify how we can support, again, in parallel with what they are doing, to able to do that. It is called core business. They're super good at that. Nothing that you have to teach over there. Try to understand how they can potentially start to developing a peripheral view and start to substantially onboard innovation from outside. And substantially, first of all, we help them sit with the business unit to gather needs, innovation needs. That might, for example, support the core, extend the core. And this is something that we do. And in that case, we go out, because technically speaking, other characteristics that the startup world is not local, it's global. And actually is not even equally distributed. It's mostly Silicon Valley, Israel, and a few other places. And so where the largest density of innovation is. So it's easier to look at there for solutions. And then we try to see if there are solutions available that might be potentially implemented and onboarded. So we do what is called technically technology scouting. We go out, we find a long list, then we sit with the corporate, we shorten the long into a short list, and then we start identifying the one that might be interesting to expose the business units to. And then together with them, understand the one that might be good to test the solution, doing a pilot or proof of concept. And then if it works, support them in the implementation. And so that's the same way we're bringing, they are onboarding innovation through a very, very, let's say, process might take from 6 to 18 months, 24 months. And then we're running recurringly. So this is technical venture client. Then there are also other tools, because again, this is mostly bringing innovation to support the core business, to support what is called Horizon 1. So technically speaking, the next 3 to 5 years. But there is also something, the company should look a bit more farther and more forward. And so what we do is, technically speaking, also in the there are other tools to help them to increase the long-term sight. And again, the ideal tool is to setting up a corporate venture capital arm, technically speaking, of investment vehicle. But unfortunately, having an investment vehicle requires a certain amount of capital, because again, under 250, 300 million, it's difficult to be efficient in doing that job, also because we need to take bets on large startups, and large startups typically are quite expensive. And also the tickets of investment are pretty large. And so for the companies that are not able to have a tool like this, we complement it by what we call innovation antennas. So substantially, we host those corporates in our innovation center in the main ecosystem, Silicon Valley. Mostly we have 15 of them over there sitting with us. And we help them to understand where the market, where the future trend is going. So again, we are sitting close by to the future. that is Silicon Valley. And together with them, we try to identify what might be the next trends that they definitely should consider. And this is another tool. And then for some others, we support to develop new businesses. Again, the venture builder is a tool that some corporates are exploring. If you have pretty good experience, you're pretty good at doing that. It's not exactly a super easy tool to be deployed. And we have seen a lot of successes, but also a lot of failures. We've seen corporate setting up and shutting down the tool because it's very, very difficult. I believe it's very, very idiosyncratic. It's difficult to have an innovation factory because all initiatives are different, are quite totally different approaches. Or we also try to support companies launching what are called Intrapreneurship program, meaning try to involve all the people working in the company to identify potential, to bring new ideas or to bring their contribution to innovation. And again, this on that side, we are getting some very good successes in a project, incremental innovation, sometimes a bit more forward-looking innovation that are actually helping the company to innovate. So actually, there are a lot of open innovation is a toolbox of many tools, and we try to identify corporate by corporate which is the best tool, and we help them to implement it as a service, complementing their own innovation team, really depending. So, and the thing that we do and pretty good at is, we have been working with many of them, and we have seen a lot of mistakes. We've seen a lot of things that do not work. I'm not 100% sure to tell you, oh, listen, this will work, but I'm pretty sure that when I see something that it doesn't, I can tell you. And that is the value of our experience, because again, we are able at least to fast track best practice of others, and particularly sometimes to avoid some mistakes or investing money in activities that we believe are definitely not so potentially likely to produce results.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think our shared commonality is the belief that corporate venturing in its different shapes can have a positive impact on the trajectory of a, let's say, more traditional company. Maybe just to double click on one or two topics. You said with corporate venture capital that you need a certain fund size in order to, kind of achieve the efficiencies, but also probably to attract maybe the talent that is necessary. So to be concrete, you're saying that from 250 million onwards, that's a size where it starts to make sense?
Yeah, again, we have statistics on the sizing of the CVC vehicle of the Fortune 500 companies, but really the large ones. And we see that, technically speaking, just a small percentage of them have funds that are below 100 million. The majority are something ranging from 250 to 500, 750. And a good one-third of them are moving into the billion and plus sizing. Because the reality is that if you are investing into a startup, you are competing with VC funds.
Yes.
And VC funds today are billion plus entities. Again, if you want to have an opportunity to invest in the best deals, you need to have vehicles that allow you to do that. And that's the difficulty for many corporate, but you can think about the Mittelstand company to be able to have the size to allow to have fund of those size. And so that's why we need probably to complement with different tools. Honestly, I believe that a corporate venture capital fund is a strategic market intelligence tool at no cost for the companies. Because the money you put into, the money you will get back at the end. Because if you properly run it, there is an asset class that is producing return. I think the return, whatever they are, 1x, 2x, 3x, are substantially not material for the company. But the fact that you have a strategic market intelligence tool at no cost is a valuable stuff to have. The problem is that there is a minimum level of capital invested to make this tool to be efficient. And that's the problem that many Mittelstand companies do have, because they don't have the size.
I mean, a billion is a high price for some market intelligence, Alberto.
Exactly. I think you need to be one of the Fortune. You need to be a 70 billion or 50 billion company to be able to have a capital allocation of the size to be put in that asset class. If you are a 2 billion company or 500 million company, there is no way. That's why we are not suggesting to go that way. we typically suggest that it's fine to have some capital that might be allocated for investment, should be managed opportunistically and strategically. Opportunistically meaning sometimes it happens that you find something that is interesting, and if it's a very, very good strategic fit, it might be good to have some capital that can be invested to keep the partnership alive, or maybe to be able to partner with a company that is not exactly deployment ready, and so add them to get to that point, but should be very, very tactical and opportunistic, and with always a strong strategic fit. But the problem is if you make a number of investment that are not so many, in a game where technically speaking, the returns are not equally distributed, but they follow the so-called power law.
Yes.
And if you make 5 investments, you might get 0 out of them. You need to make a certain number of investments allow you to return. And I think that the most complicated things to explain that I have to explain to my customers, our established companies, is to understand that while they are used to get return on everything that they do, with typically no mistakes, when you're moving to innovation, you get return in a few of the things that you're doing. And for a corporate perspective, this is simply culturally unacceptable.
Yes.
And that is the biggest complication to not just to have corporate to start this kind of initiatives, to keep them down the way. Because again, first governance change, they cut it, or there is a first economic turndown, they cut it because they don't see the results, and they cut something that doesn't seem to produce strong results.
No, I think there's really 2 dimensions where established, mature corporates really struggle with innovation, and you've clearly addressed both. But maybe just as a small summary, I mean, one is the risk part, the risk profile of this activity, because for established corporates, that phase in their lifetime is so long ago, no one remembers it, right? I mean, it was, at one point also hit and miss with, in every story of a successful company, and this is forgotten. So the risk part is not understood anymore. But then also, and you mentioned it, but just to stress, it's the dimension of time, the time necessary until you understand if the path you're on is successful or not. This is also usually, we are talking about, let's say, a handful of years where corporates typically think in terms of a financial year, and then maybe 2 to 3 years out in terms of the midterm financial planning. And so, yes, those are the 2 dimensions that are just not really understood. It's a different mindset and language that we're talking about in this, let's say, startup world, and that's where these worlds really collide. But then you mind the bridge. You act as this cultural translator.
We try to do that. It's not an easy job, but again, that's why also we need to be politically smart and try to keep the baby alive. And so that's why it's important to have different tools. Some tools that produce results in 5 to 8 years, but also some tools that produce results in 1 to 3 years. Because I need to give them some low-hanging fruit to show that what they are doing works. And then you'll be able to buy time to get the larger, more fruity fruits that will come down the way. And so I believe that adding a tool like the venture client that typically is able to, again, based on our statistics, whatever company we start, we produce results in from 18 to 3 months to 3 years. We are able to deliver results, concrete results. And so adding something like that help us and the innovation team inside the corporates to get credibility, to start showcasing that actually working with innovation produce results, get it an internal reputation, and to be able to raise the bets. And to buy time also to be able to go out for some more substantial, disruptive, adjacent innovation that takes more time to get put into place. So that's why we typically play both ways, because we need to survive. And I know, unfortunately, that politics is the biggest enemy. Corporate politics is the biggest enemy of innovation, again, particularly when there is not a strong top-level buy-in. Also, maybe you have the top-level buy-in, but then the governance change and you start from zero.
Yeah.
I'm talking big companies. the good of working with family business. Typically, if the ownership and the family is convinced that they need to take that way, they typically are pretty strong and sound to go that way. So you do need to have all this. These need to survive because they have the understanding. If they get it, they understand it and they support.
Well, look, Alberto, we could talk about the different aspects of the corporate mentoring toolbox for hours, and I'm sure we'll be able to continue our discussion. I'm a bit mindful of the time now, but before we go, in my notes, I see that Juventus and tennis do play a significant role in your life. So what parallels, or maybe non-parallels, do you draw from athletics, from sports, and the world of business and innovation?
Again, I'm a soccer watcher. I'm not a soccer player. So, but again, Juventus is my only. Again, I'm not smoking, technically speaking. At least I needed to have something that keep me vicious. And again, having something when you are not rational is something that I need. So this is what Juventus plays for me. It's a disease that you have it, and so I take it. And so when Juventus is playing, my agenda clear out. So I've been invited to big event when I saw there is a Champions League play now coming. And so that is the rational part of me is Juventus. Tennis actually is an interesting story because I been a professional weightlifter from 12 to 32.
Wow.
And so I've been training 6 days a week, every month, every week. And so what I've done. And I've been, I always say, I've not been a champion because unfortunately the DNA was not supporting that, but was a good sport weightlifter. Yeah. And then when I stopped at 35 years old, I said, okay, what can I do next? And I said, okay, I will play tennis because I noticed that tennis is something you can play up to a certain age. And I'm not good at. And but honestly, I think it's something that keeps me humble because when you enter the field and you see that you are barely able to control your hand. Again, when I'm watching Sinner or something, Djokovic playing again, I love to do the same, but unfortunately, what my mind thinks that I should do, my arm and my body is not following. And so you go there, you lose. Again, put me on the ground. And again, most of the time, when I'm using my mind, I'm pretty good. But when I have to use my body, I'm not that good. And so it keeps me humble. And again, I'm always up for a competition, not necessarily because I like to win, because I like to improve myself. And so the more ambition is the goal, the more I get intrigued. And so I'm super intrigued. Most of the time I'm losing, honestly speaking, but I still do tournament. I enroll in the tournament. I play first round, maybe I pass it. Second round, I pass it. The third one, I lose it. Sometimes I lose also the first round, but I keep trying because I believe it's the way of keeping yourself challenged and keeping yourself humble and try to improve whatever is the level.
Fantastic. And I noticed that's another commonality we have because I also started playing tennis late in life. I actually started during the pandemic.
Okay.
We were lucky to have a tennis court next door, open air. So that was pretty much the only activity we could do. And my wife had been encouraging me for years. And I just thought, I'm not going to start playing tennis at my age. But then I did. And yes, it's humbling to really start something completely new, but it's also fascinating to challenge yourself.
And then again, you realize that it's mostly the mind.
Yeah.
And it's the mind, the ability to focus on what you're doing. And again, I got distracted every 22 seconds. And so that's most of the time I see the ball bouncing back there because I was thinking, I have to make this call. Bam. Yeah. And that is what is happily happening. But I think, first of all, is the ability to get concentrated. And then is a game when you need to cope with things. And again, when you play, unfortunately, starting late into the game, everything you need to think about. Again, if you're not a natural player. So if you change me the court, I move to clay to cement, or you move to grass, the ball is bouncing different, and I took 30 minutes to adjust because my body doesn't naturally do that. While a natural player immediately get it. And so to me is a continuous reminding that we need to improve ourselves, pay attention to small things, get ready to lose. That is the beauty of the beast.
And one aspect besides the athletic, besides the competitiveness, it's we say to play tennis, and actually for adults we have very few opportunities to play anymore. But really, when you play tennis, you are able to feed that need for playfulness, and so I really just also enjoy that part. I think that's quite healthy, and yeah. So for me, it's a source of just pure joy, and
When I'm
usually if
winning, I agree with you. And
yeah,
but
usually if I have a lesson scheduled and I'm thinking, oh, I don't have time for this actually right now. I mean, the minute
no,
I'm
you
on
have
the
you have
court,
to you
this
have to. This
feels
is interesting. But again, I'm more happy when I win. But also, again, when I win, I'm definitely less happy when I do something wrong, despite of the final outcome. And again, it's complicated, but it's nice.
fantastic. Well, Alberto, thank you very much for your time, for your insights, for sharing your wealth of experience in this world of entrepreneurialism, of innovation. And as mentioned, I look forward to continuing our discussion at another opportunity. Thank you for joining the
And see
podcast.
you on the court at this point.
Excellent. So that was Alberto. Thank you for his time and joining us today. And also thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning into Impulse. Until next time, keep innovating and stay inspired. Over and out.